Welcome to Real Talk with the Vagina Docs, where we break down the P's of pelvic health: pooping, peeing, pregnancy, postpartum, prolapse, pain, pleasure, and physical activity. I'm Dr. Jocelyn Conley, pelvic floor physical therapist.
And I'm Dr. Jordan, chiropractor and functional medicine expert, and together, we're the Vagina Docs.
Let's dive in. We are so excited to welcome onto the show Lee and Mariah with Iris Proper. Thank you guys so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. We've been having so much fun working with you as we build the Healing Intimacy program. And it's just, as I think about the beginning when you first reached out and then came to our office with just the lovely gifts, I just feel like we've grown. Like I feel so much closer, and I feel like I've known you ladies for way longer than we've actually known you guys.
Yeah, we feel the same way.
That's so sweet.
The vagina pillow is really what made it, like, solidified our bond that day. So
it was funny. Yeah. One of my patients a couple days ago actually showed me that exact person. I was like, you'll never guess. I already have one. The ladies from Iris Proper brought one over with sex toys to put inside. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to fill
it. You know, one of the things that I like to think about those pillows. So we have the vulva pillow that we gave you guys. We also have like a clitoris pillow and a breast pillow, and they're so fun and whimsical. And they kind of fit into the whole ethos of what we're trying to do here, which is destigmatize sexuality and the female body. And one of the ways I think that is so great to do that is just through humor and having fun with it instead of taking everything so seriously. So we are happy to share that gift with you. And it's always such like a nice way to kind of like ease into the discussion like the one that we're having today.
It was such a beautiful introduction. So thank you so much. So
before
we dive into the main part of the conversation, can you tell us how this all began? How did you two meet? And then what led to this new beginning of starting Iris Proper? And then include how you came up with the name.
So we met because our kids went to preschool together. And we just instantly became really good friends. We bonded because we mispronounced each other's names. I'm Lee, that's Mariah, and they're kind of unconventionally spelled. And so that's how we became friends, and we just really got along well. Like, our families are so close. We travel together. Like, last night was 4th of July, and we celebrated 4th of July together. Our kids are best friends. They're almost like cousins. We both got matching puppies from the same litter. So we've always just been really close and have kind of shared life together. Our kids are a little bit older now. Now they're like middle school age, late elementary school age. And so Mariah and I have had some more time on our hands. And just as part of the growth process that we've gone through as mothers, now we're like reflecting back on ourselves as women and like what brings us joy now in this period of life. So anyway, we kind of got the idea to start a business together, and we didn't want to be doing like the same thing that anyone else was doing. We wanted to do something a little bit different. And so the idea kind of just popped in my head one day, like, why don't we start a sex toy business? But let's do it in a way that really empowers women and gives women permission to revisit the sensual side of themselves. And we were like, well, if we're going to do this, like, we have to be the face of the business. We have to put ourselves out there. And so Mariah, bless her heart, was like along for my crazy idea. And she's like, let's go, let's do it. Let's figure this out. And so everything has kind of been a learning curve since then. But really, like, at the end of the day, we're not sex experts, but we want to be a source of inspiration, or at least permission, for women like us who are in partnerships, who might be moms, to see themselves in us and to feel inspired to revisit the sensual part of their lives, especially as they put their kids and their husbands and their dogs and their households, like, or their careers, like, front and center for so long. And so that's kind of how it came about. Mariah can talk about the name.
So the name, Lee and I love color. Like, we love color. So we were just like, like spitballing, like throwing out all this stuff. And we also love flowers. And so like the whole iris flower is very sensual and feminine. And then like the proper just kind of came along because we felt like we wanted to have a store that really spoke to women. And then the extra bonus is that sex toys tend to be nice and bright and colorful. So we still got all of our bright colors to come along. So that's kind of how we
I
came
love
up
it.
with
It's
Iris
such an
Proper.
elegant and yet bold name. And it makes me really curious about what makes your store different than some of the other stores out there. So let's dive into that. I know growing up, when I thought of like a store, a store to buy sex toys, I would think about, I mean, there was always like, there was a stigma to it. And even in college, I had never been into a sex store. Actually, I have never been inside a sex store until I met you. Literally I was over 30 years old and there was this.
You were so uncomfortable the first time we went into a sex store together.
I really was. Oh
yeah,
my
you
gosh.
were like kind of panicking.
Yeah. I've done most of my shopping online because I think there was this shame associated. And I also associated like the adult stores to be like, oh, there's porn there. Like everything that I was told was bad growing up, that's what a sex store was. So does any of that resonate with any of you other ladies? And like, how did that come into, what you've made your store as?
Yeah. So for me, my first time going into a sex store was in college. I went to college in LA. And the store that I remember going into is the Hustler store on Hollywood Boulevard. And I mean, probably not the seediest store ever because it's kind of like probably was like their flagship store. But what does the name Hustler bring up for anyone? It doesn't bring up female pleasure for sure. No,
and not
right?
no. Like nothing around like
not female centric or
vagina. Not at all.
Kind of like almost giving up yourself is like the sense that I feel, but
yeah,
totally.
You're not in control of it.
It's for someone else.
It's for someone else.
So that's kind of where I was at. And I don't think I even went into another store. I mean, Mariah and I went into a store locally. And it hadn't been on my radar at all. And so when we went into making our online boutique, we really kind of came in like with the idea of like, what is going to make us feel safe? What is going to make us feel seen? Can we create a boutique-like shopping experience online that is more reminiscent of what we might experience when we're shopping for like clothes or makeup or accessories or any of these other things, and make that experience more like that. Like that was really kind of the driving force behind it. And, we wanted to make it beautiful and classy. And also we knew that there was so much education that we're lacking personally. And we found so much as we were going along. So that's when we were like, okay, we also would love to have resources on our site for women from experts. So that's why we partnered with you guys, and we were so excited to partner with you guys because you guys are so incredibly knowledgeable about what you do, not only in sexuality, but just with the female anatomy in general. For people listening right now, I'm also a patient of Dr. Jocelyn and Dr. Jordan, and they're helping me with my pelvic floor issues. And so I know firsthand how amazing they are. But you guys have the opportunity to like resource women beyond just the physical act of like using a sex toy. And so we want women to have those resources when they come to our site, and the education as well. It's a whole package. We're not just like, we're complicated as women. And so we need just like a shopping experience, but we need the education, and we need all of these things to make us feel safe within the sensuality area of our lives.
I think that education piece is so huge. And I love that that's what you guys want to bring into all of this, just because, I've been on a lot of different sex toy websites and they might educate about like what the toy does, you know what I mean? But like in terms of helping us as women to reprogram these kind of negative influences that we might have had throughout our lives that are inhibiting or keeping us from having pleasurable sex, experimenting, joy, like deeper connection with your partner just because you feel a sense of confidence and freedom within yourself, and a sense of safety within yourself. And I think that's what education can do. Is I think just different information can make you really kind of rethink and then rewire like programming's been up to this point.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, I think I think as women, we've come so far in terms of empowering ourselves about our sensuality, but there is so much stigma, whether we realize it or not. I mean, for me, I remember when I was trying to get pregnant and we were doing a lot. My partner and I were having a lot of baby making sex, right? And I was like, this is like the best sex of my life. How is this possible? And it wasn't until like I kind of reflected back and I was like, I must have had so much shame that I wasn't even aware of, or like so much stigma about the physical act of sex, that when I was like trying to conceive, it kind of went away, right? And so it was I gave it a purpose.
You gave it a purpose.
I gave it a purpose.
So it was like,
it was
wow.
okay.
It was okay.
And so that's kind of like the progression of like what we're doing and what we're learning, is that a purpose doesn't have to be deep, and the purpose can simply be you are doing this for your own self and to discover what feels good in your body. And it is about you and your own pleasure and not about your partners. And I think like when we think about Hustler, going back to that, that's about the male pleasure, right? And so when the women are coming to that store, like I think the preconception is when you go into that store, what can you purchase to enhance your male partner's pleasure? And so our store is really like, okay, what can you purchase to enhance your own pleasure? And we're going to say, we're giving you full permission to do that just for your own sake and for no one else's. Ultimately, that benefits you the most, but it also benefits your partner as well, and the connection that the two of you have.
Yeah, I love that, especially because I would say, at least for me, and this is some of the conversations that I have with my patients who come in for reasons surrounding dissatisfaction with their sexual health. Sex is the most vulnerable thing that we can do. I think there is just such a spectrum of stripping to total authenticity in that moment. There's so many things that can get in front of us to just being real and being totally ourselves and getting past the shame. Yeah.
And vulnerable.
And I like to use the analogy, like sex is like dance. You see the dancer that is just flowing and just in it, and then you see the other person who's dancing and they're just in their head. I have had that personally. That has been my story for as long as I can remember. And I am a great dancer, but only until I can let go and just get out of my own way. And I've realized like the more authentic I am in an intimate space, oh my gosh, it's just like the most pleasurable, fun, present experience of all.
I was going to say, I feel like if you can overcome fears in the bedroom, the way that it's going to show up for you in like your regular day-to-day life and other fears you might have, I think it like transcends and transmutes like those things too. So
yeah, it's that confidence of knowing what you want, being able to say what you want with no shame, with no like apology. This is me. This is what I want. Yeah. And it translates.
For anyone that's listening to this episode, I welcome you to like pay attention to what you're feeling in your body as we talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about, because that is a great way to tune into what areas that are speaking to you for you to work on. Like if the idea of using a sex toy like creates constriction in your throat or in your lower belly, like this is something that you should really explore and work through, because it's a block. I know for myself. So the very first sex toy I purchased was in like 2019. I was probably 28. There was so much shame. And I'm like, I was aware of the shame. And I'm like, what the fuck, Jocelyn? You are a pelvic floor physical therapist. You are talking to your patients about, some of them are into this, some are into that. And I was really going through an identity crisis of who do I think I am to give anyone sexual advice whenever I'm such a baby? And then the part of it,
let me just reframe. I don't think babies have these problems. It's us as adults. So
you're right. I'm such an adult.
Babies are people on their own, and they seem to enjoy when they're exploring themselves.
But so I think what I was
creating shame was on top of your shame, right?
I know. We do that, right? But I think what was in my way was there was so many misconceptions around sex and around toys that I had to get through. So I want to hear of what some misconceptions are about both like the idea of using toys and then also just the sex toy industry as a whole. For me, I thought like if I had to use a toy, I was defected.
Right. Yeah. I think when you rephrase a toy as it's just a tool, then it's different, right? Like how many things do we go and we would buy to help us clean better, to help us like, in any aspect of like your beauty routine, like you buy tools all the time and you're always looking for like something to make it better. So when you try to look at it like that, I think that takes some of the
I love
stigma off of
there's
it.
a lot of misconceptions. Like some people think, well, if I start using a tool or a toy, how will I get addicted to that? Is that the only kind of pleasure that I will be able to continue to orgasm off of? And while for a while, you might get used to that sensation, it's not something that's permanent. As soon as you stop using it, your body will recondition to just being with your partner if that's how you want to proceed. And the way to really think about it is like the better you know yourself and what brings you pleasure, and the more comfortable you feel like having an orgasm, you're going to be able to, the flow is going to be better. Like you were talking about, Jocelyn, are you in your head or are you feeling the flow? Are you in your body or are you in your head? And I think really it's practice, right? So again, like if I bring it back to my story, I had a really long-term boyfriend when I was really young during those college hustler years, and I had never had an orgasm with him. I had never masturbated either, right? I never did self-pleasure until after my relationship broke up. And like once I started doing like self-pleasure, then like in subsequent relationships, I was like, okay, now I know what it feels like to have an orgasm. I know how my body works better. And the more that I knew myself, the better that was eventually with my partners as well. And so some people can do it without toys, and that's great too. But toys are really an easier way for you to experience pleasure and to discover what it is that makes you feel good. And also, it gets your body used to having that sensation in a really safe environment, which is just you by yourself, right? You don't have to worry about like also taking care of your partner's needs at that time. So that's a misconception, like just thinking too much about what sex toys represent and the stigma around it, and that you'll get addicted to them, which is definitely not the case.
Hey listeners, if you're feeling frustrated with your sex life, whether it's due to pain, lack of pleasure, or just feeling disconnected from your body, we want you to know that you are not alone.
That's right. So many people struggle with these issues in silence, but it doesn't have to stay that way. We've created the Healing Intimacy Program to help take you from pain to pleasure and restore confidence in your intimate life.
In this course, we dive deep into the physical, emotional, and even chemical factors that could be holding you back. And we'll give you the tools to transform your intimate experience.
If this resonates with you, head over to our website and join the waitlist. You'll be the first to know when the Healing Intimacy Program launches, and you can take the first step toward a sex life that's not just pain-free, but pleasure-filled.
Visit www.vaginadocs.com to sign up for the waitlist today. Your pleasure matters, and it's time to reclaim it. Yeah, no, let's talk about the science real quick. And then I know we want to dive into, I know I want to talk about our favorites that we would recommend people get, but these tools, and I like the word tools, what they provide is different sensory inputs. And we are just one big sensory machine. These tools offer different inputs that our hands or our parts cannot provide. We have different receptors in our body that sense different types of inputs. There's light touch, there's vibration, there is different ways that the tissues can be stimulated that will...
There's tickle touch, there's compression, there's stretch,
there's pain.
Well, pain will be stimulated from potentially any of the senses, like any of those receptor inputs, but we do have some specific nociceptors that like sharp or like a hit, right? Like those are going to be more nociceptive in nature of like, oh, like let me have a reaction. But yeah, essentially in our, the way I like to explain it to patients in terms of if we're looking for an output response, maybe let's say an orgasm, maybe let's just say any sort of the physical good feels that you want to feel. So basically, how the brain works is input of information. That input is us being the receptor. That's literally our eyes, our inner ears, our tissue receptors. And then on top of that, we have basically all these internal mechanisms going on. And then we have past memories. And basically, your brain is taking in all this information at once. Then it files it, organizes, and says, okay, like this is what we're intaking, what do we need to have this output response we're looking for? But again, it's like, okay, if those past memories are there and they're doling the response that we're looking for, well, then do we need to change an input? Do we need to change the input? Could be even, let's say, a different way of thinking about something, a perception change, but
different position,
but
different room,
different way of breathing, like
different connection with your body.
So literally change the input, which that's the cool thing about the toys is you can definitely get some different input change. And and then that essentially, like you said, this is all learning. Like I think everyone thinks because of movies, like how sex is supposed to look or be, and it's just always this. I think some people,
yes.
Fireworks.
Some people are gifted like me and blessed, and that's great and all, but just kidding.
She really is. It's not fair.
Just kidding. Yeah. But there's a lot of background trauma for me with the religious stuff and sex. But basically, like, like our brain has to learn. It has to learn these inputs, how to file it so that we can have what we want.
The misconception that sex can just happen and there's no work behind it is the biggest bullshit lie. And that just like professional athletes, these freak athletes that just have natural ability and then they just do a little bit of practicing and they're just insane. The same with sex. There's a small percentage of people in this world that are just sexperts. They are so in tune, so present. Sometimes because of what happened in the past, other times they're just like, they were not like, yeah.
Just open
and then there's
free.
The majority of us who are awkward and we have to train. And so I teach my patients, I'm like, look, an orgasm, you can have your base orgasm just like everyone breathes. We're going to breathe. Our brain seems going to make us breathe. But then if you add some intentionality behind it, you can train your orgasm to be like literally anything you want it. And they could be different types of orgasms and it can be different strengths. You can feel it elsewhere. You can have an orgasm that's stimulated remotely, not even from your genitals. What I love about the different inputs that these toys and tools can offer is a faster way to train those. And I think a lot of times we are really good with our hands being with our work, but a lot of times people are not using their hands for their job beyond typing. So the touch, the execution isn't always there, and you have to practice it just like with anything else.
I was just going to say with the toys, one thing we've learned too is that there's even different, like there's rumbly vibrations. They even have different like patterns and things that you can get into, and that's just goes to show that people respond to different things. And so that's one of the things you can figure out what you like by experimenting.
How old were you ladies when? And Lee, you kind of shared you were in college, but Mariah, what was your history with sex toys? How old were you when you got your first one?
Well, I was in a sorority in college and we had like a sex party and we had this girl come and she brought all these toys and it was actually a lot of fun because there I was with like all my friends and, you get all these girls together and you throw in some wine. And this was the Sex and the City years, right? Like we would also all get together and like watch Sex and the City. And I just so remember that rabbit that Charlotte had. And then like my friend that hosted the party, we bought so many toys that she got her own rabbit for free. I mean, it was just like one of those funny things. But then I also remember like getting things when I got married, like as funny gifts. And I even look back now and one of them was like supposed to look like a blush brush. And it's this hard piece of like plastic or fake metal. I don't even know what it is, but now I'm like, that is so not body safe. Like, like it should be some like nice, comfortable, something soft, but it's funny. But I think being with all those girls, it was interesting. Some girls would walk around naked. They didn't care. They were free as they could be. And then there was me who was like, had my robe and was all covered up. Yeah, it's been interesting. But yeah, like I think like Lee said, like recently it'd be more like getting into like the sex toys, and thank goodness my husband's like, he's all on board. He's ready to he wants to be a product tester
awesome.
for sure.
It's sometimes, have you guys come across any men that weren't cool with sex toys? I have come across, and that was just like, okay. It was so early on and I was younger and I just was like, bye. But I think
for sure.
Men
it's super
people
it can be intimidating. I mean, luckily for Mariah and I, our husbands are not intimidated by them, but like just based on some of the conversations that we've had with women or with some sex therapists that we talk to, that's definitely something that comes up, because they're like, well, why do you need this? One of my girlfriends, one of my
they don't want to be replaced.
She and her husband have always had she was actually one of my college roommates, have always had a really great partnership in the bedroom. And she's always been one of my friends who it always came easily to me. I was more like you, Jocelyn, more on the awkward side. Like I said, it took me a while, and she bought a whole bunch of stuff from us. And she was telling me that when it came, her husband's like, what is all this? And she's like, what? It's just, extra stuff. And so I think it's fun. Like some women will be confident in just bringing it into the bedroom, and the husbands ultimately, I think, will realize that it's great for everyone. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I've heard the analogy made before. It's like sometimes Batman needs a Robin. And so you still got your Batman and your partner or your man, but, why not add a little Robin into the mix to kind of enhance the situation? So,
yeah,
absolutely. So do you guys have a favorite product that you like to use?
Yeah. What is your favorite product, Mariah?
For me, like the simpler, the better. Like just the Dame Palm or like even the Dame Dip. They're pretty simple. I like those. And then I really enjoy the Wicked brand of lube that we carry. I think there's 3 different kinds and I love them all. So those would probably be like, if somebody asked, those would be the easiest things to be like, start here.
Yeah, what about the Wicked lube do you like?
I think like my experience with lube was literally like the KY jelly from the drugstore, and it wasn't my thing. I feel like it got like sticky, and I think probably even had like a scent. I don't know. And so like we hadn't used lube in a long time. And when Lee and I started to get some of this stuff to sample, it was like, oh my God, like this is great. Like this makes everything so much better. And I can't believe something as simple as lube we haven't been using, but it just feels quality. It doesn't get sticky. It has no scent. I don't know. To me, it's like night and day. So I think, and it doesn't cost that much more money. It's just like I think it's organic, even just making that simple switch and spending a little bit more money.
I think the lube is like a game changer for sure. If you're not using it, like definitely use it. Even if you think that you don't need it, it's just going to enhance the situation. And it is so important to use one that has really high quality ingredients, because it turns out that area of our body is super absorbent. So what you use matters for sure. I think that for me, what my husband and I are most excited about are there's wearable vibrators. So what they are, you can actually like, you as a woman wear them. It's hands-free and it could be controlled by an app. So if you're not together, you can still use it as a partner. Like your partner can use it from their phone, turn it on, trigger it. They will experience the sensation as well as you while you're wearing it. So it's like this little kind of like C shape. And you just put it right in there, and it's kind of like nice and discreet. And so it's kind of fun for partner play too.
That makes me think of a movie. What movie is that?
There's
from?
Quite a few toys.
It's with Katherine Heigl, or am I thinking she was blonde? She has it in. I forget the actor's name, but she's like in the restaurant, and the guy's like turning it on. Do you know what movie I'm talking about?
I don't know, but I can just imagine that scene for sure.
Is that something you guys do? You go to restaurants with it in?
No, but I want to.
I'm down with that.
Date night challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, the fun thing about this is that Brian and I are like working up to some of this stuff too. So I want any woman listening to this to realize that we were like the awkward ones, more like Jocelyn, not the like really bold ones, more like Jordan. And so all of these things are still baby stepping for us too, right? Like it's a journey for us too. Kind of like you said, Jocelyn, like we still have some of our own shame that we're breaking down. And like we want women to realize that's normal. Like look at us and realize that's normal. Yes. And you can still start experimenting and start dipping your toy and your toes into this stuff too, even when you don't feel even when you don't feel fully comfortable and confident with it. Like it is a practice, and like don't look at us and think we've got it all figured out, because we don't, but we're going to do it anyway, even when we are blushing. So,
but having these conversations is such a big game changer. I think there's something about talking to other women, right? And you realize, like I'm not the only one that feels that.
And the fear won't always be there. Like I can't even believe I'm sitting here as an owner of a business named the Vagina Docs, talking to all of you about how much I love the clitoral suction toy. Because a little bit over a decade ago. So when I was 22, I would have been crawling out of my skin. I could barely talk about sex toys to my best friend that we literally were friends since diapers. So this is, if you feel that way, then like continuing to face your fears and just strip the shit that holds your back, you'll get more and more comfortable.
Yeah.
Speaking of the toys, so I know the one that I was going through, and for the suction one, the Lilo Sona 2 Cruise, is that, did I get that right?
So it's very different than a vibrator. Have either of you used it?
I haven't used that one.
We haven't like sampled that one. We have the other suction one. And I think that's the difference too, is we have the Dame one that does like a suction, but the Lilo Cruise uses like pulsing vibrations, but I think it's still supposed to emulate like oral.
It is so much different than I think using a vibrator there. And sometimes I prefer that. Sometimes I prefer a vibrator, but it's less aggressive.
We've played around with like the other one in water, and it's just cool to see how it moves the water. You can tell it's gentle.
Interesting.
So
the Indulge double-sided vibrator.
What do you like about that one?
I like that the ends were both a bit different in terms of shape, because I feel like sometimes that can really matter, especially because our canals might all be a bit different in shape and even like depth and stuff like that. And it just seemed like a really, honestly, I'd say initially like a friendly vibrator based on what I was reading, what I saw. And I don't know if you guys could speak more to that, but I know for me when I first, because honestly, like I didn't even start using a vibrator until like I was 23, 24, and I'd been a lesbian longer than that. So I don't know. It's interesting. Everyone's just different, right? Like I know actually quite a few lesbians who are like almost kind of scared of them. But I know I started with something just like really simple that I felt comfortable with. You know, all these other things that had the bunny tail or bunny whatever ears, and like all seemed just a little frightening at first. I don't know if you guys can share any more about this product, but that's why I liked it.
So one time we heard that one referred to as the Swiss Army knife of sex toys. And I think, like you said, like one end vibrates, one end doesn't. And for people who don't really know what's going to feel good, you can use it for your G-spot stimulation or for your clitoris. And then, like you said, it's small, it's pretty, it's light blue, it's waterproof, and I think it's like $50. I mean, I just think that's like a great price point to start with. You're not feeling like you're making a big investment if this is something new. I think, did I say it's waterproof? But yeah, I mean, I think it's just like
waterproof
really
is such a bonus, just because the water is just such a great place to use these tools. For sure.
Experiment and have fun.
You know, I think one concern too that a lot of people might have, especially when they're buying their first toy, is just how sanitary is it? You're using it on a part of your body you don't traditionally think is sanitary, and so if it's waterproof, you can easily clean it and know that every time that you're using it, it's going to be clean for you. All of our toys are medical grade silicone, which means they're not porous at all. If you go for like a really cheap toy, I think that's the big difference between a really cheap toy that maybe you would have seen in some of these seedier shops if you had gone in a sex toy shop, the blush brush or whatever it was. Like They might not be bodysuit material. They might be porous material as well, meaning like whatever comes off your body stays in the toy and won't come off. And so what we have is you can be trusted that they're going to be good for your body too and safe, and that you're going to be able to clean them and have a clean, safe experience every time you use your toy.
I remember, this makes me think of, you bring up the porousness. I one time had a toy that I had left out, and my dog had gotten a hold of it, and I was like, is this safe to use? And then like immediately the next thought was, no, Jordan, throw this away. You know, this is not going to be good if you try and use this. So yeah, I had to get rid of that toy.
I have a dog that's a year old, and Lee and I joked because he is a terrible dog to like eat things. He's eaten so many bad things, and so it was like,
yes,
should I keep all this stuff away from him?
Because it's a toy, right? Like, I mean, it's their toy too, so.
This reminds me,
it's soft.
This reminds me of an Instagram I saw. So one of the toys that the Vagina Docs recommend is the Dame Palm. Dame is an incredible company. It's run by a woman, MIT engineer that she's teamed up with, and she had a baby. And she posted on her Instagram that she actually gave like the Dame Palm as like a little teething toy to her baby. And I say that because it's so soft and it's so safe in terms of the material that it's used. And it's just like the right size. And it doesn't look seedy at all. Like it doesn't look like she's given like a rabbit vibrator to her baby to suck, you know? So, I mean, this is kind of like how...
Yeah. I mean, if your kid found it and they're
nice, your baby to use as a teether toy, which obviously is an extreme example, but I think if she had gone out and like her baby was sucking on it, no one would have been the wiser. So that's how discreet these toys can be too.
I picked that toy because I also thought that would be... Because some women, right, like once you start experimenting on your own, I feel like the most you really figure out, do I like more internal versus external stimulation? And I thought that toy would be a really good, like, again, another good first toy for someone who wants to explore more externally. And I could see it being a fun toy to also then like use with your partner. So
yeah, definitely. And exactly. What I like about that one is it kind of fits in the hand of your palm. So you can really explore too all at one time, like where on your vulva you like that sensation. So maybe it's not just like intense clitoral sensation. Maybe it's kind of like an all over sensation. And that toy really gives you the opportunity to discover like, okay, where is it that I like to feel that sensation? And you can adjust it sort of like by rotating it really easily with your palm. So it's a great
Very user friendly.
Yeah. Don't have to know like pinpoint spots to hit. You could just get a global. I know a lot of times that's what I prefer versus just like right on my clitoris. It's like as the arms extend out into the labia minora, like that
You're
spot.
About the arms of the clitoris?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could talk about anatomy in a different one.
Well, I want people to know, like, these arms you're talking about, like, coming out of the toy, like, where are these arms coming from?
Yeah.
It makes me think of a wishbone, right? Like,
it kind of is.
Shape.
One of the other toys, too, the last one that I liked was, probably going to botch this, Jajao Hera Rabbit.
I think it sounds French.
Okay.
But could not even.
Yeah. Jeju, I think, right, Lee?
Thought this one was a good toy because I think it's a bit more adventurous, and especially because a lot of people are afraid of the back door, which, I mean, once you start exploring there and you like it, you're like, wow, I mean, who knew there was a whole other place I could have pleasure from. So I thought this toy being used for that, and I was curious though to hear from you ladies, like, what if you've used this toy, what other like ways in which, if there are, you know, utilizing this one too?
I haven't,
and I will say, like, my experience too with the rabbit toys, like, again, like, they're pretty intimidating, and it was a little too much toy for me. But I think you're right, Dr. Jordan, with this one, it's a little bit more discreet, and I love the idea of using it as on the back door because I hadn't thought of that. You know, like when I was in my 20s, like the back door wasn't as big of a thing, and it's funny now because I have friends who are still single and like they're like, this is now like the thing. Like people are doing this, like it's
trendy.
Normalized. Yes. And I'm like this old married lady, like this is not something that's been like, it wasn't a thing before I got married. And so it was just never something. But I know that again, like sure, if we introduce that into the repertoire, so to speak, like it would elevate things. So that's a good idea. So I got to get that toy. So maybe we can report back in a later
and yeah, nice for like internal stimulation as well as clitoral, right? But also, I mean, you could turn this thing around and it could be stimulating like internally as well as the back door, which is why.
Very and I think probably for some people, they might need both areas stimulated at the same time. Like maybe just one area isn't enough. So an erotic toy is probably awesome.
Yeah.
But so if someone wanted to get a toy, like where would be the best place to start? If they were coming onto your website, like what can they expect?
Yeah. So first of all, don't expect anything too crazy. It's relatively safe for work. We actually have different recommendations to try and make things a little bit easier. So we have some of our favorites. We're going to be adding the Vagina Doc's favorite. So if you want to shop any of the ones that we've talked about today, you can easily find that collection. We have a beginner section where we talk a little bit about the different types of vibrators, and we have some recommendations as well. A lot of them are the ones that we've talked about today. Or just like reach out to us. You can email us. We're here to help you and would love to guide you as you make that decision. Don't overthink it either, because as we've kind of talked about today, it can be a practice. And don't put too much pressure on yourself to know exactly what you're going to want. It might take a few tries before you find like that ideal toy that's really going to hit the button, so to speak, for you every time.
We've tried to like break them down. Like we do like the couples toys are all in one spot. Like the clitoral stimulation in one spot, solo toys more in one spot. So we've tried to kind of group them up. That way, if you are a first time buyer, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Yeah, and Lee said it's like work appropriate. like if you're on our website and somebody was to walk up behind you, you don't feel like you have to slam your computer down because there's like just some crazy stuff sometimes. Lee and I have come across some crazy stuff doing some research.
If that's your thing, no shame. We're not trying to throw shade at that at all. It's just I think we cater more to people who are probably like getting into this like the first time or are a little bit more traditional probably in where they're going. And maybe that's next for you. And like, hey, like use this as a jumping off spot for where you're going to be going.
Right.
So,
Would someone need to worry about how the product is going to be delivered to their house? Like worried about the kids finding it or...
No, it's completely like discreet shipping.
And then, and your name Iris Proper doesn't scream out sex toy. You know what I mean? Like on the box either. What do you recommend for women in terms of cleaning and like how to keep things clean and sanitary?
Yeah, I mean, I think just some warm water and soap. You don't have to get crazy. They do sell obviously like toy cleaners that you can buy. Which I don't think
with the porous toys, you have to be more specific about how you clean them. But with the medical grade silicone, soap and water is typically all that you need.
Yeah.
And then I just want to bring up too what Mariah had brought up, that my personal recommendation, like if you are going to get a toy, also get lube, just because it does, at least for me, makes a difference in the experience.
Absolutely.
So
and
the water-based
things are going to go an easier sensitive part of your body, so you don't want to accidentally like rip yourself if you're dry when you're using the toy. And also for lube too, most toys are silicone, and so if you are using a silicone toy, you want to make sure you're using like a water-based or aloe-based lube. Don't use a silicone lube, don't use an oil lube, because that can gradually wear down silicone.
Degrade the silicone.
So if someone's interested in shopping with you, with Iris Proper, where's the best place for them to go?
Come to our website, shopirisproper.com.
Irisproper.com. Okay, so all the information will be in the show notes. And then anything else you want our listeners to know, ladies?
This is your permission. We're giving it to you.
Yeah, there's no shame. Like, this is the beginning. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining us on today's conversation. We're excited to keep talking about things that are just long overdue to talk about just openly. And, as humans, yes, we are healthcare providers, but we're also very much humans in our 30s who just wish we could talk more openly about these things, even in our practice. I know we're getting better at that, but it's still, when we're in training, it's like they beat you down and program you to be robotic and think that if you say the wrong thing, you're going to get sued. So you get fearful. So,
yeah, a lot of deprogramming even from our training.
Yes.
So
thank you, ladies, again for joining us on Real Talk with the Vagina Docs. I'd say we got real today. If your listeners are not already subscribed to the podcast, be sure to subscribe. And if there's any conversations that you want us to explore, please reach out directly. All the information will be on the show notes. Thank you again for listening. Until next time on Real Talk with the Vagina Docs.